Welcome back to the Global Business Report. Revenues of Okomu and Presco rose in the second half of 2019, July to December, but they're not enough to lift the palm oil makers in the full year results of said 2019. The closure of Nigeria's Benin border helped to raise revenues of the palm oil makers, but full year results show that the firms need more than the border closure to remain profitable. On a year-on-year basis, Okomu's turnover was down by about 50%, 5.4 billion naira. Its gross profit also dropped by about 13%. Arise business analyst Chika Mbonu is more on the results of the palm oil players in Nigeria. Chika, you're welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
What are the numbers telling us about the impacts of the border closure on these companies?
To be able to look at these figures, we need to put some perspective to them. And let's look at palm oil, the story of palm oil in Nigeria.
Yes.
Indeed, palm oil is a very important commodity. If you walk into any typical supermarket, there's literally no item on the shelf that doesn't have elements of palm oil inside it. And of course, also how in the home cookings how we use them. So it's a very important commodity in Nigeria. In the 1960s, let me tell you, you may be surprised to know that Nigeria used to contribute 45% of the total global world output of palm oil. Sadly now
we've dropped.
We're just contributing about 1.5%, less than 2% of the total world output. We used to be number one at the time in the 60s. Now we're the fifth.
The Asian tigers are taking over.
We're the fifth largest producer. The largest producers in the world now are Indonesia and Malaysia, who the stories out there that they got their seedlings from Nigeria to go back there. Yeah. Production capacity now, depending on where you look at, hovers between 600 and 900,000 metric tons in a year. Our consumption, national demand, consumption about 1.7 to 2.1. So we have a gap of that. Nigeria spends about $500 million every year in importing palm oil, even though, again, it's in the FX exclusive list. So, but still, we spend this amount of money. That if Nigeria had continued at the level of 45% world output from the 60s, by now, Nigeria would be making about $14 billion every year, annually, as revenues from palm oil. So this is one of the causes of the finding of oil in Olebiri in 1956. So with the oil find in Olebiri,
neglect of
Nigeria neglected all these other sectors,
right.
And it's been difficult to recover since then. And so you find Nigeria is spending this day $500 million every year importing palm oil.
Huge import pressure.
The imports come from, sadly, as I told you before, Malaysia and Indonesia. And that has been the major burn for the producers of palm oil in Nigeria. The massive importation of palm oil. If you move into the supermarkets, most of the supermarkets in Nigeria, you will find that on the shelves are all imported products. So you will think, therefore, that the closure of the border will have some impact on the results of the companies, but they didn't. Because we've also heard that, we know that the results of this company have been cannibalized in the past by the massive smuggling. But we hear that the border closure has been effective in the south, but it has not been very effective in the north, especially the Kano area, where a lot of the smuggling, historically, for palm oil has been happening. And so if you put this smuggling in the basket of the problems that these manufacturing companies face in Nigeria, remember, including the fact that the macroeconomic environment is very weak.
Yes.
The demand is weak, very soft. And then look at inflation at double digits, which will affect operating expenses.
Right.
Not surprising, the kind of results that both companies brought in. So if you look at Presco, for example, turnover fell by about 77%. It's
pretty huge.
Yeah. Came in about 19.88 billion. But let's put it out there also that these are unaudited results.
Yes.
These are unaudited results.
We need to talk about that.
These are unaudited results. I think my discussion with especially the financial institutions and some quoted corporates, that the Nigerian Stock Exchange came out with this rule. I don't have it on a piece of paper yet. This rule that said, let me put it as simple as it. You either do audited at 60 days after year end.
Yes.
Or you must do unaudited within 30 days of year end. So,
company, all of them are just
so you will find,
doing
you look at the financial sector, the big, I think the JT,
yes,
Zenith, Access, and then UBA elected to do the 60 days audited. So that's why you have not seen them push out the unaudited 12 months of 2019.
Well, that firms
so a lot of, that's why I see a lot of the plethora of results out there now.
Right.
So I thought I should put out these results unaudited. But let's look at the stories there behind them. And the revenues for Presco fell by about 7%. I said if you throw in the smuggling into the basket of problems they confront, which is macroeconomic environment weakness.
Right.
Inflation at double digits could affect the cost of production. You not surprisingly, the result came in there. So I do believe that the smuggling helped a little, especially because of the fact that if you looked at the Presco and the Okomu results, the Q3 and especially Q4 results, the quarter 3 and Q4 results, which should coincided with the border closure terms,
yes,
we are much better than the Q1 and Q2 results. So there was some salutary impact on the results by the border closure, but not enough to cover the weak demand they've had in their products over a period of time.
And so, if I want to pick your brain, I would assume that both companies and also more players in this space would actually support the border closure continue. They want it to continue.
They want it
indefinitely.
Yeah, this is but they also want it to be more effective.
Right.
Because there's this feeling out there that it has not been very successful in Kano area, where a lot of the massive smuggling in the palm oil coming from Malaysia and Indonesia coming from that. So you will find the revenue fair by that. Now, one other major component there is the cost of sales or the gross margin. The gross margin for Presco, for example, last year was about 78%.
That is
this year
sizable.
This year, very sizable. This year came into 73%, a 5% fall. Not surprisingly, therefore, because of what I mentioned,
right,
we are dealing with double-digit inflation. And the operating environment is not getting better. Logistic issues on the roads and other power problems still affecting the cost of operation. The other issue there that you should look at also is their expenses, cost of operation. Last year, in 2018, they spent about 2 naira to every 100 naira in expenses. In every revenue end, they spent about 2 naira. In this year, they spent about 40 naira. You can imagine the increase in the expenses. So not surprising, therefore, that the profit before tax fell by about 13%. So you can see that Presco, has struggled, struggling with smuggling, struggled with weak macroeconomic environment, struggled with increase in cost of operation due to the inflationary environment. The same thing with the result of Okomu. Okomu turnover, whereas that of Presco fell by 7%, Okomu's fall was less. It fell by about 3%.
Okay.
The gross margin for Okomu last year was about 74%. This year it was about 70%, so about 4-5% fall, similar to the fall in Presco. And then, of course, the operating expenses. For every 100 naira revenue in the end, they spent about 23 naira in 2018. And for this year, 2019, they spent about 29 naira. So you can see again the impact of inflation. Not surprising, therefore, that the profit before tax, at the end of the day, fell by a whopping 23%. One other factor that was affected the results is finance expenses. And again, the government has been trying to, this is a favor sector. Yes. Still, their finance expenses have been a bit high. For Presco, increased by about 48%, and then for Okomu, it actually fell. But the people that affected most was Presco.
And that's going to impact on their margins.
Exactly, profitability.
I want to look at the stocks for both. I think Okomu was down, I think, 20% last year. It's up 22% year to date. Okomu, I think, trading at 68 naira. Stock didn't move yesterday. Presco's at 49. Despite all these challenges, you're still seeing, the stocks perform well. My theory is that this probably has to do with the fund flow. Last time you were here, we talked about the central bank policy with OMO forcing funds to go into the stock market. I'm thinking that's the reason why their stocks are still. I mean, year to date, Okomu is up 22%. Despite all these challenges for financials, you would think the investors will drop it.
My comments on those, what is said could be one of the reasons. But you also note that this is also a preferred sector. They fall into the agri sector.
Right.
And subsequently, if you do recall, this is one sector that the Central Bank of Nigeria, Central Bank Governor, call him the Minister of the Quasi Minister of Agriculture now.
Yes, that's correct.
We hear about him more than the Minister of Agriculture. So it's a sector that he has focused on, and indeed, he's written that about $500 million investment will be put into this sector. In the next 8 years.
Yes.
They have an 8 years plan between 2019 and 2027.
Yes.
The objective is to move Nigerian production from 600,000 metric tons now to about 5 million tons a year, making us, fully, self-sufficient in the production.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's happened is that the government has given loans, or the CBN have given loans, preferred loans to this sector at 9%, just to help them in production. And the most important is CBN called a conference of all the governors in South, South, and Southwest, where the arable land is favorable for the cultivation of palm kernel, and made them contribute 100,000 hectares each minimum, towards the pushing of the sector.
Focus.
Yeah, so that's objective. So it's a preferred sector. It's a commodity that we need. Gap is there, $500 million a year that will push out on FX. And so I do believe that the sentiments are right for their stocks.
To perform the way they perform. I think we've got less than a minute, but real quick, you've already mentioned the gap, you've mentioned the focus of the central bank and the government on that particular sector. But the outlook, do you think that gap can be closed? There's still power challenges, roads, all these other things. Well, what do you think as far as the outlook?
The first thing is they have gained from the border closure. So the first thing is to make sure that even if the border is opened, the smuggling is limited. We've cried in this program several times that this sector is suffering from smuggling. So that's the thing. Yeah. But the issue is that the demand is good, and it's a preferred sector. So I believe that the sentiments are right for them for the future.
Mr. Chika Mbonu, thank you so much for joining us today with your insights on the Okomu and Presco performance and the crude palm oil sector.